Just knows they're actually matching. It's like a sea of Celeste here today. Cannings is going to love it. This is the Bianchi Aquila CV of time trial specialist and Dutchman Jos Van Emden of Jumbo-Visma. Now, as many of you all know, Jos is incredibly quick when it comes to racing against the clock. We're at the start now of the Giro d'Italia with the time trial in a couple of days' time. He actually used a very similar bike when he won the final time trial of the Giro d'Italia back in 2017, which was actually a day of double Dutch because it was the same day that Tom Dumoulin overtook Nairo Quintana on that final day to win the race overall. And he's been very fast in it again this year. They won the team time trial on it at the UAE Emirates Tour, a race which Primož Roglič went on to win overall. And Primož has won most of the time trials he's done this year on a very similar bike. Now, although the frame set now is a few years old, I still think it looks incredibly neat and slick. The brakes are all covered. They're rim brakes. As you can see, they're sheltered and aero there at the front and then located underneath the chainstays here at the rear. You'll also see that there's a black piece of tape covering up a small eyelet here. That is where the mechanics gain access to the front cantilever brakes to center them, etc. Now, Jos is a pretty tall chap. I reckon he's at least 6 foot or over 1 metre 80 centimetres. And as such, he's got quite a few spaces underneath his bar extensions there. 2.5 centimetres of spaces between the base bar and the bar extensions. And on top of those, the grips look to be custom, both of them in fact. The mechanics have cut down some foam for the armrests. And at the end there on the bar extensions, I think that is an old latex inner tube that's been cut up, which just happens to perfectly match the Celeste on the rest of the bike. Now, Jumbo-Visma are entirely sponsored by Shimano, and as such there's a lot of Shimano on this bike, including the entire group set and the wheels, etc. In terms of his shifters, well, they're all Di2 of course. At the end there, the satellite shifters on the bar extensions, they control the rear derailleur here, and of course he's got access to the front ones on the base bars at the side. Now, the wheels themselves, as I said, come from Shimano. They are tubular, which is what most of the pros are still riding. There are some that are trying to use tubeless, particularly in time trials these days, but Jos currently still on tubulars. They're the tubular SE Trispoke front and the disc tubular rear. On them, we have got some Vittoria tyres. Doesn't say exactly which ones they are, but as you can see, they're gunwale, and they're particularly narrow by modern standards. Just been measuring them. I reckon they're actually 23 millimeters. On the calipers, they're coming out as 24, but I think that's for the sole reason that the disc and the tri-spoke at the front are so wide. Beyond the Di2 shifters at the front, the Shimano group set obviously extends right through here to the drivetrain. At the rear, we've got an 11 through to 30 cassette on here at the moment. As I've already mentioned, we're filming this a couple of days before the 2019 Giro d'Italia starts, and there's a real sting in the tail to that first time trial with pitches of up to 16%, so that might be why it's got up to 30. It also looks like it's got a reasonably small front chainring, but that's actually quite deceptive. It's a 42 inner ring there. What makes it look small is the fact that it's got a 58 tooth outer ring. Marked Dura Ace, but as many of you will know, you can't actually buy a 58 tooth Dura Ace chain ring, so that is a custom ring that Shimano offer to a number of the teams. Now, you might be wondering whether somebody even as strong as Jos Van Emden ever manages to spin out a 58 tooth by 11 tooth combination. And maybe he does when there's a decent downhill, but the reason why a lot of pros these days are using a huge front chainring, and have been for some time, is because it actually reduces the overall drivetrain friction. That's because the chain is not pushed over to one side or the other, but in general, when on the flat roads doing 55 k's an hour, they're reasonably central, the chain's fairly straight, and that saves them a few watts. Jos has also got the Shimano integrated power meter here on the Dura Ace crankset. I mean, that's something that has changed since my time. This is actually his spare bike. It is, of course, set up exactly the same way as his race bike, but back in my day, power meters are really only reserved for the race bike, and sometimes not even then, but now they've got them on the spare bikes too. Linked up, of course, to his Pioneer head unit there at the top. At the top here, we've got a time trial specific Fizik RS saddle, which has the integrated gripper just here. No need to be sticking on some emery tape on this particular saddle. And the mechanics have got a really neat and very faint mark just here, just to make sure that his saddle height is entirely correct. In terms of his measurements on this bike, as I mentioned, he is one of the taller riders in the peloton, and as such, his saddle height from the centre of the cranks here to roughly here, which I expect where he sits most of the time in a time trial, is just over 81 centimetres. The distance from the tip of the saddle here to the end of the bar extension is just under the UCI limit of 85 centimetres, 84.8 is what I measured it at. From the centre of the axle here up to where the base bars are, where he rests his elbows, is 58.5 centimetres, and the the base bar measures 41 centimetres centre to centre or 43 from edge to edge. And its cranks are 175 millimetres. Moment of truth then is the weight. Here we go. So just a little under 9 kilos, which is well in excess of the UCI weight limit of 6.8, but fairly standard for time trial bikes, which do use a hefty amount of carbon fibre. The aim being, of course, to be as aero as possible. Lightweight comes second when it comes to time trials. Now, one thing I often get absolutely blasted for in the comment section is not doing the free hub sound test. I'm going to do it so I don't get blasted this time. You ready? I will leave you to decide whether that's hot or not. Let us know your thoughts on this bike in the comment section just down below this video. And if you are a huge fan of Bianchi and Celeste, don't forget you can purchase this very sweatshirt over at shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com. There should be a link to that on your screen right now. And if you can't get enough of your time trial bikes and tech, we've got a video on that very subject which you can find just down here.